The hallways of Preston Music Academy gleamed under the soft evening lights as May finished polishing the last of the brass doorknobs. Her reflection caught in the shiny surface. Tired eyes, hair tucked messily under a faded bandana, and hands roughened from years of cleaning solutions. At 42, she had worked as the evening janitor at the prestigious music school for nearly 7 years, becoming almost invisible to the students and faculty who walked these halls. The building was mostly empty now, with just a few practice rooms still occupied by dedicated students. May pushed her cleaning cart quietly past each door, careful not to disturb the beautiful melodies floating into the hallway. She paused outside room 7, where a young man was playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. His fingers danced across the keys with practiced precision, but May noticed he was rushing the middle section, missing the gentle sway that made the piece so moving. She lingered longer than she should have, listening with closed eyes until the music stopped. The student emerged, startled to find someone standing there. "Oh, I didn't see you," he mumbled, clutching his sheet music. "Sorry," May said softly, looking down at her mop. "Very beautiful playing." The young man nodded awkwardly and hurried away, probably never considering that the cleaning lady might understand anything about Chopin's nuances. May continued her rounds, working her way toward the main performance hall where the annual faculty meeting would be held tomorrow evening. The prestigious event always made her nervous. So many important musicians gathered in one place, with expensive clothes and loud opinions. They needed the space spotless, and Dr. Wilson, the head of the piano department, had specifically requested that all the instruments be perfectly cleaned. Inside the large hall, May carefully wiped down each chair, dusted the lighting fixtures, and saved the grand piano for last. This was always her favorite part. When she was certain no one was around, she would allow herself 5 minutes, just 5, to sit at the magnificent instrument and play. She placed her cleaning supplies on the floor and settled onto the bench, her work uniform looking starkly out of place against the glossy black piano worth more than she'd earned in 10 years. May took a deep breath and began to play, her fingers remembering a piece she had taught herself by watching Professor Chen's advanced students through doorways year after year. The music filled the empty hall, Debussy's Reverie flowing from her hands with a tenderness that spoke of dreams long deferred. In another life in her homeland before she immigrated, May had taken piano lessons as a child. Her teacher had said she had a gift, but her family couldn't afford to continue the lessons after her father lost his job. That was 30 years ago now. The sound of a door opening somewhere in the back of the hall made May jump. She quickly stood up, nearly knocking over the bench in her haste. "Hello? Is someone there?" A voice called out. "Just cleaning," May replied, grabbing her dust cloth and frantically wiping the piano keys. Almost finished. Professor Geller, the composition teacher, walked down the center aisle. He was younger than most faculty, with kind eyes and perpetually disheveled hair. "That sounded lovely," he said, looking at her curiously. "Was that you playing?" May's cheeks burned with embarrassment. "Sorry, I not touch again. Just quick dust." The professor tilted his head. "No, it was beautiful. Debussy, right? Where did you learn to play like that?" May looked at her hands, rough and chapped from cleaning chemicals. "Long time ago. Little bit lessons as child. Now I just watch and remember." Before Professor Geller could respond, the hall doors swung open again as Dr. Wilson entered with the school's technician, deep in conversation, completely dead in the middle register. "Can't be used for the student showcase next week," the technician was saying. "I've ordered parts, but with the holiday shipping delays, it won't be fixed for at least 2 weeks. Dr. Wilson sighed dramatically. "And what are we supposed to do with a keyboard with no middle octave? The practice rooms are all fully scheduled." "We can store it in the back room until the parts arrive," the technician suggested. They noticed Professor Geller and nodded in greeting, walking past May as if she were just another piece of furniture in the room. She quickly returned to her cleaning cart, becoming invisible once more. "Richard, good timing," Dr. Wilson said to Professor Geller. "The faculty party tomorrow. I'm thinking we should make it a bit more lively than last year's snooze fest." Perhaps some impromptu performances. As they continued talking, May quietly gathered her supplies. She caught fragments of their conversation. Complaints about students, discussions about repertoire, plans for the party. Dr. Wilson mentioned setting up the broken keyboard in the corner of the reception room as a place to put drinks, since it was useless for playing. When they finally left, May finished cleaning the hall in silence. Their voices echoed in her mind as she polished the wooden floor, wondering what it would be like to be part of their world, to discuss music as equals, to be seen as more than just hands that cleaned their spaces. Later that night, in her tiny apartment across town, May sat at her most prized possession, a second-hand keyboard with several broken keys that she'd found at a garage sale 3 years ago. The apartment was small but tidy, with faded curtains and furniture that had seen better days. The walls were thin, so she wore headphones as she played, fingers skipping over the non-working D and F keys, having learned to adapt her playing around the instrument's limitations. On her day off last month, she had taken 3 buses to visit a music store on the other side of the city. For 2 wonderful hours, she had pretended to be a potential customer, testing their keyboards and pianos, soaking up the joy of playing on fully functioning instruments. The salesperson had eventually realized she wasn't going to buy anything and had started ignoring her. But those 2 hours had sustained her for weeks. May practiced late into the night, working on a particularly difficult passage from a piece she had memorized by watching one of the graduate students. Her fingers stumbled over the complex rhythms, but she kept trying, replaying the memory of the student's hands in her mind. Without formal training or sheet music, this was how she learned, watching, remembering, and trying to recreate what she saw and heard. Her alarm was set for 5 a.m. The faculty meeting meant she would need to arrive early tomorrow to prepare the reception room and make sure everything was perfect. As she finally went to bed, her fingers still moving in phantom patterns against the thin blanket, May thought about the broken keyboard they planned to use as a table for drinks. What a waste, she thought, to treat a musical instrument that way, even a damaged one. She fell asleep thinking about how she would play it if given the chance, how she would work around the dead keys, finding pathways through the music that circumvented the broken middle section. In her dreams, she wasn't wearing a cleaner's uniform, but sitting at a gleaming concert grand playing for an audience that actually saw her. Morning came too quickly. May prepared a simple breakfast and dressed in her work clothes, catching the early bus to Preston Music Academy. The streets were still quiet as she let herself in with her key card, the weight of her upcoming day settling on her shoulders along with her worn backpack. As she walked through the silent halls, May hummed softly to herself, fingers tapping against her leg in time with the melody. Tonight would be different from her usual cleaning routine. Tonight she would be present while the faculty celebrated, invisible but there, making sure their glasses stayed full and their mess was quickly cleared away. Little did she know that the broken keyboard, sitting uselessly in the corner of the reception room, would soon become the unlikely bridge between her hidden world and theirs. The evening of the faculty party arrived with a flurry of activity. May had been working since dawn, polishing every surface of the reception hall until it gleamed. The caterers bustled around her, setting up elegant trays of finger foods and champagne flutes. May tried to stay out of everyone's way, focusing on the final touches, straightening chairs, adjusting flower arrangements, and making sure the bathrooms were spotless. In the corner of the room sat the broken keyboard, just as Dr. Wilson had suggested. Someone had draped a decorative cloth over part of it, turning the once proud instrument into nothing more than an expensive table. May frowned slightly as she passed by it, resisting the urge to run her fingers over the keys. Even broken, it deserved more respect than this. Make sure the ice buckets stay filled. Mrs. Henderson, the event coordinator, instructed May without making eye contact. And we need someone to collect empty glasses continuously. Can't have the place looking messy. May nodded, adding these tasks to her mental list. As the clock ticked closer to 7, she changed into her service uniform, a black button-up shirt and slacks that were slightly too big for her small frame. She pulled her hair back into a tight bun and took a deep breath, preparing for an evening of being simultaneously present and invisible. The faculty began arriving at 7 sharp, filling the room with chatter and laughter. May recognized most of them: Dr. Wilson with his booming voice, Professor Geller looking uncomfortable in a tie, the stern-faced violin instructor whose name she could never remember. They greeted each other warmly, immediately forming small clusters of conversation, wine glasses in hand. The school's director, Dr. Hayashi, entered last. At 72, he was a living legend in the classical music world, having performed with major orchestras across the globe before settling into his role at Preston Academy 20 years ago. Despite his fame, he was known for his humility and kindness, often stopping to chat with maintenance staff and remembering their names. May had cleaned his office for years, carefully dusting his many awards and photographs with famous musicians. As the evening progressed, May moved silently through the crowd, collecting empty glasses and replenishing ice. The conversations around her flowed like music, discussions of upcoming performances, gentle gossip about students, debates about teaching techniques. She absorbed it all while remaining unnoticed, just another part of the service staff. "I heard the Chicago Symphony is looking for a new pianist," one professor said loudly over the rim of his wineglass. "Apparently their last one stormed out after a disagreement with the conductor." "They should hire that prodigy from Juilliard," another suggested. "The one who performed at Carnegie Hall last month." Me recognized the professors, Dr. Lawrence, who taught music theory, and Professor Reed from the piano department. They were standing near the broken keyboard, using it as a surface for their drinks, just as intended. "Speaking of pianists," Dr. Lawrence said, lowering his voice but not enough, "did you hear about Baker's student? The one he thought would win the national competition?" Professor Reed laughed. "Crashed and burned during the second movement. Baker was devastated. Said he'd never heard someone butcher Rachmaninoff so badly." They chuckled, unaware or uncaring that May was nearby, collecting their discarded napkins. Their callous discussion of a student's failure made her chest tighten. She knew how it felt to have dreams of music slip away. As the evening wore on, the wine flowed freely, and the faculty grew more boisterous. Dr. Wilson had taken center stage, regaling everyone with stories from his days touring Europe. May continued, her duties increasingly invisible as the party hit its stride. Around 9 o'clock, someone suggested an impromptu performance. Several faculty members had brought their portable instruments, anticipating the possibility. A flutist played a lively folk tune, followed by a cellist performing a movement from Bach. The room applauded appreciatively after each performance, the atmosphere growing more festive. "Who's next?" Dr. Wilson called out, his face flushed from wine. "How about you, Richard? Something original from our esteemed composition professor." Professor Geller shook his head. "I didn't bring anything to play on." "Use the keyboard," someone suggested, pointing to the corner. "That old thing?" Dr. Wilson laughed. "Middle octaves completely dead. Useless for anything but holding our drinks." A moment of awkward silence followed as everyone remembered the instrument's limitations. Then Dr. Lawrence, now considerably intoxicated, had an idea that made him snicker. "I know who should play it," he said, his words slightly slurred. "Hey, you cleaning lady!" He snapped his fingers in May's direction. May froze, a tray of empty glasses in her hands, suddenly aware of dozens of eyes turning toward her. "Come on, come over here," Dr. Lawrence persisted, gesturing broadly. "Show us your musical talent. Everyone gets a turn." A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the room. Most of the faculty looked embarrassed by their colleagues' behavior, but no one stepped in to stop him. "Lawrence, that's enough," Professor Geller said quietly, but Dr. Lawrence waved him off. "What's the matter?" "It's just a bit of fun. The keyboard's broken anyway." He turned back to May. "Come on, just one song. We're all musicians here, even the help should get a chance to perform." May stood frozen, her heart pounding. The room seemed to tilt around her as all eyes fixed on her face. Some people looked away in discomfort, others watched with mild curiosity, and a few seemed amused by her obvious distress. I work," she managed to say. clutching the tray tighter. Many glasses to clean. Oh, the glasses can wait, Doctor, Lawrence insisted, taking the tray from her hands and passing it to another server. Dr. Wilson, don't you think our hard-working staff deserves a moment in the spotlight? Dr. Wilson, caught between professional decorum and the effects of several glasses of wine, gave a non-committal shrug. If she wants to play, sure. See? Even the boss approves, Dr. Lawrence said, taking May's arm and guiding her toward the keyboard. Just one song, then back to work. As she was led across the room, May caught sight of Professor Geller's concerned expression and Dr. Hayashi watching with unreadable eyes. Her cheeks burned with humiliation as whispers followed her path to the keyboard. Does she even know what a keyboard is? This is uncomfortable. Lawrence has had too much to drink. The broken keyboard stood before her, some empty glasses still, perched on its surface. Dr. Lawrence removed them with exaggerated ceremony, then pulled away the decorative cloth, revealing the full instrument. It was a high-end model that would have been impressive if not for its known defect. The entire middle octave, from middle C to the B above it, was completely dead. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lawrence announced grandly, I present our cleaning staff's musical debut. He gave an exaggerated bow toward May, eliciting more uncomfortable laughter. May stood there, hands trembling slightly, aware of the expectant silence that had fallen over the room. This was clearly meant to be a joke. Put the cleaning lady at a broken instrument and watch her confusion when half the keys don't work. A perfect punchline for their evening entertainment. She could walk away. She should walk away. Return to collecting glasses and fade back into invisibility. That would be the sensible thing to do. But as she stared at the keyboard, something shifted inside her. Years of being overlooked, of pressing her ear to practice room doors, of playing on her own broken keyboard at home. It all welled up inside her chest. With quiet dignity, May sat down on the bench. The seat was still warm from where someone had been sitting earlier. She adjusted her position, back straight as she'd seen the students do, and placed her hands gently above the keys without pressing down. A few more chuckles drifted through the audience, people assuming she was just playing along with the joke, pretending to be a concert pianist. Dr. Lawrence stood nearby, arms crossed, waiting for the punchline, for her to press the dead keys, and produce no sound, for the awkward moment when everyone could laugh at the absurdity of a cleaning woman thinking she could play. May closed her eyes and took a deep breath. In her mind, she could see her childhood piano teacher from long ago, showing her how to position her hands. She could hear the echoes of countless students she'd overheard practicing in the halls of Preston Academy. She opened her eyes, focused, on the keyboard and began to play. Her fingers found the lower register first, establishing a gentle bass line that would normally have been supported by the now silent middle octave. Instead of playing a standard arrangement, she adapted on the fly, her left hand stretching to cover the bass while her right hand danced in the upper register, filling in the melody where the keys still functioned. The first notes filled the room and the smirking faces turned to confusion, then surprise. May was playing, really playing. And not just random notes. She was performing Debussy's Clair de Lune, one of the most beloved classical pieces, rearranged on the spot to work around the keyboard's limitations. The room fell silent except for the music flowing from her fingers. The notes of Clair de Lune floated through the reception hall, transforming the atmosphere in an instant. Where there had been cruel amusement, there was now stunned silence. Where there had been chattering and the clink of glasses, there was now only Debussy's haunting melody, reimagined through May's nimble fingers. Dr. Lawrence's smirk faded, replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. He took a small step back, wine glass frozen halfway to his lips as he watched May's hands dance across the keyboard. Around the room, faculty members exchanged glances of astonishment, some leaning forward to get a better view, others standing perfectly still as if afraid any movement might break the spell. May was lost in the music now, eyes half closed, body swaying slightly with the rhythm. She had played this piece hundreds of times on her broken keyboard at home, but never for anyone else. Now her private passion was on full display, and the broken middle octave presented a challenge her adaptable fingers were well prepared to overcome. Where the composition traditionally relied on the middle register, May created elegant workarounds, her left hand occasionally jumping to the higher octaves to fill in essential notes, then returning seamlessly to the bass line. She had developed this technique from years of working around the broken keys on her own instrument, never imagining it would one day allow her to turn a moment of humiliation into something transcendent. Professor Geller watched with a small smile growing on his face, remembering how he had caught her playing in the empty hall the day before. Dr. Wilson's mouth hung slightly open, his usual confidence replaced by wonder. Even the servers and catering staff had paused their work, standing at the edges of the room, trays still in hand as they watched their colleague reveal a hidden talent none of them had suspected. As May approached the piece's famous climax, she faced the greatest challenge, the sweeping arpeggios that would normally cascade through the now silent middle octave. Without hesitation, her fingers split the melody between the highest and lowest registers, creating a unique interpretation that somehow preserved the emotional heart of the piece while working around the instrument's limitations. Dr. Hayashi, the elderly director, moved closer to the keyboard, his experienced ear catching the technical brilliance of what she was accomplishing. His eyes narrowed in concentration, then widened in appreciation as he understood the complexity of her adaptations. The final notes of the piece hung in the air, delicate and shimmering, before fading into a silence so complete you could hear the gentle hum of the air conditioning. May's hands remained poised above the keys for a moment, then slowly came to rest in her lap. She kept her eyes down, suddenly very aware of the crowd around her, unsure what would happen next. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved or spoke. Then Professor Geller began to applaud, a slow, deliberate clapping that cut through the silence. Dr. Hayashi joined immediately, his weathered hands coming together with enthusiasm. Like a wave, the applause spread through the room, growing in volume until it filled the space that May's music had just occupied. She looked up, startled by the response. The faces around her had transformed. The mockery was gone, replaced by genuine appreciation, even admiration. A few people were nodding to each other, murmuring comments she couldn't hear over the applause. Dr. Lawrence had backed away, his earlier smugness replaced by something that looked almost like shame. Dr. Hayashi stepped forward as the applause began to fade. "That was extraordinary," he said, his voice carrying the weight of his decades of musical expertise, especially considering he gestured toward the keyboard, and everyone understood. Not only had she played beautifully, but she had done so on an instrument with a significant handicap, adapting a complex piece on the spot to work around its limitations. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked, asking the question that was on everyone's mind. May folded her hands in her lap, acutely aware of all the eyes on her. I learned little bit as child, in my country. Then no money for lessons." She paused, searching for the right words. "But I watch here, listen, when students practice." There was a murmur through the crowd as the implications became clear. This woman who had cleaned their offices and classrooms for years had been silently absorbing their teaching, learning from the very lessons they gave to students who paid thousands in tuition. "You learned by listening?" Professor Reed asked, incredulous. "Without formal training?" May nodded, uncomfortable with the attention but straightening her shoulders slightly. "I watch through doors sometimes, not disturb anyone, just listen. Then practice at home." "On what instrument?" Dr. Wilson asked, his voice unusually gentle. "Old keyboard. From yard sale, also broken." A small, wry smile touched her lips. "Many keys not work, so I learned to go around." This revelation caused another stir among the faculty. Many exchanged looks of amazement, and something else, something that looked almost like guilt. Professor Geller stepped forward. "That explains why you were able to adapt so brilliantly to this broken keyboard. You've been playing around dead keys for years." May nodded again, her eyes briefly meeting his before looking away. "Play something else," someone called from the back of the room. Others quickly agreed, the request spreading until it became a gentle chorus of encouragement. May hesitated, then turned back to the keyboard. This time there was no mockery in the request, only genuine interest. She thought for a moment, then began to play again. She chose Bach's Prelude in C major, another piece she had learned by listening outside practice rooms. The broken middle octave forced her to reimagine the piece's flowing arpeggios, creating a unique interpretation that preserved Bach's mathematical precision while adding something new, a quality that spoke of obstacles overcome, of beauty found in imperfection. As she played, May forgot her surroundings once again, transported to the place music always took her, somewhere beyond the daily struggles, beyond her small apartment and aching hands, beyond the years of invisibility. Her fingers moved with confidence now, emboldened by the room's earlier response. The Bach piece ended to another round of enthusiastic applause. This time, May allowed herself a small smile, a quiet acknowledgement of the moment's significance. "How long have you been working here?" Dr. Hayashi asked when the applause subsided. 7 years, May replied softly. Dr. Hayashi shook his head, slightly, a gesture that seemed to contain both admiration and regret. 7 years and none of us knew. The unspoken truth hung in the air. None of them had bothered to look beyond her uniform, to see her as more than the woman who emptied their trash and polished their awards. Dr. Wilson cleared his throat, glancing uncomfortably at Dr. Lawrence, who was now standing at the back of the crowd, looking like he wanted to disappear. "Well, we know now," he said firmly, "and I think I speak for everyone when I say we'd like to hear more." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. The faculty party had transformed into something entirely different, an impromptu recital by the most unexpected performer. "Perhaps," Dr. Hayashi said thoughtfully, "we should move to the main hall, use the grand piano instead of this broken keyboard." May's eyes widened at the suggestion. The grand piano in the performance hall was the crown jewel of Preston Academy, a concert-quality instrument worth more than she earned in 10 years. "Oh no," she protested, suddenly flustered. "Not for me. I just cleaning lady." "Not tonight," Professor Geller said with gentle firmness. "Tonight, you're a musician." Professor Reed stepped forward, surprising everyone who knew of his usually reserved nature. "I'd like to hear what you can do on a proper instrument," he said. "We all would." May looked around the room, taking in the encouraging nods and genuine interest on faces that had barely acknowledged her existence for years. Something was happening here, something beyond a momentary entertainment at a faculty party. Something was shifting in how they saw her, but also in how she saw herself. For years she had played in secret, believing that her music was meant to remain hidden, a private joy never to be shared. Now these accomplished musicians, people whose careers and reputations were built on their musical abilities, wanted to hear her play, not as a joke, not as an oddity, but as a fellow artist. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely above, a whisper. "I try." The gathering moved as one body toward the door, conversations buzzing with excitement and speculation. May stood from the bench, still somewhat dazed by the turn of events. As she rose, she noticed Mrs. Henderson, the event coordinator who had barely looked at her earlier, waiting nearby with an expression that mixed embarrassment with new respect. "I'll take care of the cleanup here," Mrs. Henderson said, gesturing toward the glasses and plates scattered around the room. "You go play." May nodded her thanks, then followed the procession of faculty members moving toward the main performance hall. Dr. Hayashi fell into step beside her, his presence both intimidating and reassuring. "What will you play for us?" he asked as they walked. May thought for a moment, mentally reviewing the pieces she had taught herself over the years. On a fully functioning piano, with all keys working as they should, what would best showcase what she could do? "Chopin," she said finally, the name of the composer coming out with reverence. "Nocturne in B-flat minor." Dr. Hayashi raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed by the challenging choice. "One of my favorites," he said with a small smile. "I look forward to hearing your interpretation." As they entered the grand performance hall, with its perfect acoustics and magnificent piano waiting on the stage, May felt a lifetime of dreams and a night of transformation converging into this single unexpected moment. The performance hall seemed to hold its breath as May walked toward the grand piano. Her work shoes made soft tapping sounds against the polished wooden floor, the same floor she had cleaned countless times. The faculty members filed into the front rows, their faces expectant in the soft lighting. No one spoke above a whisper, as if they had collectively agreed this moment deserved reverence. May paused before the gleaming black piano, its lid raised to reveal the complex inner workings, strings and hammers that would respond to her touch with perfect precision. Unlike the broken keyboard or her second-hand instrument at home, this piano had no flaws to work around, no dead keys to avoid. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. She glanced back at the audience, momentarily overwhelmed by the attention of so many accomplished musicians. Dr. Hayashi gave her an encouraging nod from the front row. Professor Geller smiled warmly. Even Dr. Lawrence was watching intently, his earlier mockery replaced by genuine curiosity. Taking a deep breath, May sat down on the bench and adjusted its height. A small gesture she had seen performers do hundreds of times while she dusted around them. The bench felt different from this side, not as an object to clean but as the foundation for her performance. She placed her hands in her lap for a moment, collecting herself, then raised them to the keys. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in B-flat minor filled the hall, rich and resonant in a way May had never experienced before. The piano responded, to her lightest touch, giving voice to nuances she had only imagined on her broken keyboard at home. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the sound wash over her. This was how the piece was meant to be heard, how Chopin had intended it as a. She continued playing. Something remarkable happened. Without the limitations of broken keys, May's true musicality emerged even more clearly. Her interpretation of the Nocturne revealed both technical skill and emotional depth. The melancholy opening phrases spoke of longing, of dreams deferred, but not abandoned. When the music shifted to the middle section's more hopeful tones, her touch lightened, bringing a luminous quality to the melody. In the audience, Dr. Wilson leaned toward Professor Reed. "She has no formal training?" he whispered, his disbelief evident. Professor Reed shook his head slightly. "Apparently not. At least not since childhood." "It's not possible," Dr. Wilson murmured, but the evidence was right before him, undeniable and moving. Dr. Hayashi listened with his eyes closed, a slight smile on his weathered face. Having judged countless piano competitions and heard some of the world's finest pianists, he recognized what was happening. They were witnessing that rarest of things, raw, natural talent that had somehow flourished without proper nurturing, like a wildflower growing through concrete. As May approached the Nocturne's final section, her confidence grew. Her body swayed gently with the music, no longer stiff with nervousness but flowing with the emotional current of the piece. When she played the final chord, letting it resonate before slowly lifting her hands from the keys, the hall remained, silent for several heartbeats. That magical moment after great music when no one wants to be the first to break the spell. Then the applause began. Not polite, obligatory clapping, but enthusiastic, heartfelt appreciation. Several faculty members rose to their feet. Dr. Hayashi was among the first to stand, his face alight with what looked almost like vindication, as if May had proven something he had long suspected about the nature of musical talent. When the applause finally subsided, Dr. Hayashi approached the piano. "That was remarkable," he said, his voice carrying easily in the hall's perfect acoustics. "Truly remarkable. But I'm curious, you said you had some lessons as a child?" May nodded, her cheeks flushed from the performance and the warm reception. "Yes, in my country until I was 11. And after that?" She looked down at her hands, workers' hands with short nails and rough spots from years of cleaning chemicals. "No money for lessons after father lost job. We moved to America when I was 16. Music was luxury we couldn't afford. Dr. Hayashi nodded thoughtfully. And yet you continued to play? To learn? When possible? In high school, music teacher. Let me practice during lunch sometimes. Then nothing for many years, no piano. She gestured around the hall. Until I get job here. Then I listen. Watch through doors. Learn pieces I like. The faculty exchanged glances, many looking uncomfortable as they realized the implications. For years, this woman had been hungrily absorbing music from the edges of their world, learning, despite being excluded from the formal education they provided to paying students. 3 years ago, I find keyboard at yard sale, May continued, warming to her story now that people were actually listening. $15 because many keys broken, but enough working to practice. I play every night. Professor Geller stepped forward. That explains the adaptability you showed on the broken keyboard earlier. You've been playing around dead keys for years. May nodded. You learned to find another way to make music sound right. Dr. Wilson cleared his throat. Why didn't you ever say anything? About your playing? The question hung in the air, and May looked at him with a directness that made several faculty members shift uncomfortably in their seats. Who would listen? She asked simply. I clean floors, empty trash, I am invisible. The blunt truth of her words settled over the room. No one could deny it. They had all seen her nearly every day for years and looked right through her, never imagining she might have depth, talent, or passion beyond her role as the evening janitor. Dr. Lawrence, who had started the whole evening's events with his cruel joke, stepped forward. His face was flushed with what appeared to be genuine remorse. I owe you an apology, he said, the words coming out stiffly but sincerely. What I did tonight was inexcusable. May regarded him for a moment, then gave a small nod of acknowledgement. There was no anger in her expression, only a quiet dignity that made his behavior seem even more shameful by contrast. Dr. Hayashi had been watching this exchange with interest. Now he turned back to May, his eyes thoughtful. Would you play something else for us, he asked. Something of your choosing this time. May hesitated only briefly before nodding. She turned back to the piano, thought for a moment, then began to play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. The first movement, with its gentle triplets and haunting melody. It was one of the first pieces she had taught herself completely by ear, listening outside practice rooms and piecing it together note by note. As she played, Dr. Hayashi moved to sit beside Professor Reed, speaking in a low voice that wouldn't carry to the stage. 35 years teaching music, he murmured, and I've never seen anything quite like this. Professor Reed nodded, his eyes never leaving May's hands. It makes you wonder how many others there are out there. People with this kind of gift who never get the chance to develop it. Too many, Dr. Hayashi replied, his voice carrying a weight of regret for all the talent lost to circumstance. Then, more resolutely, he added, but perhaps not this one. When May finished the Beethoven piece, Dr. Hayashi approached the piano again. The other faculty watched curiously, sensing something significant was about to happen. May I ask how old you are, he inquired. 42, May replied. Dr. Hayashi nodded as if confirming something to himself. Not too late, he said, more to himself than to her. Then more clearly, May, what you've shown us tonight is extraordinary. Not just your playing, which is remarkable on its own, but your dedication. Your persistence in pursuing music despite every obstacle. May listened, her hands resting lightly on her lap, uncertain where this was leading. Preston Academy has a special scholarship program, Dr. Hayashi continued. For exceptional cases. It's rarely used, but it exists for situations exactly like this one. He glanced around at his colleagues, many of whom were nodding in understanding and agreement. I'd like to offer you formal training, real lessons, a chance to develop your gift properly. May's eyes widened. But I am too old. Students here are young. Music doesn't care how old you are, Dr. Hayashi said with a gentle smile. And neither do I. I must work, May protested weakly. Have bills, rent. The scholarship includes a stipend, Dr. Hayashi explained. Not much, but enough to live on while you study. And there would still be some work here, assisting in the music library perhaps, or helping with administrative tasks. But no more cleaning floors. He paused, then added, "Unless you want to, of course." May sat very still, her hands gripping the edge of the piano bench. The offer seemed impossible, like something from a dream she might have had on her long bus rides home after cleaning the very hall where she now sat. "You would teach me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Real lessons?" "I would be honored to," Dr. Hayashi said. Then he glanced at the other faculty members, and I suspect others would as well. Professor Geller nodded immediately. Professor Reed raised his hand slightly in agreement. Even Dr. Wilson, known for being selective about which students he accepted, gave a firm nod. "But why?" May asked. The question simple but profound. "Why now?" The room fell silent as everyone confronted the implicit challenge in her words. Why now, after 7 years of invisibility? Why only after she had been forced to reveal her talent through a cruel joke? "Doctor." Hayashi didn't shy away from the truth. "Because we failed to see you before," he said simply. "That's on us, not you. But we see you now, and what we see is a musician who deserves the chance to fully become herself." Tears welled in May's eyes, but she blinked them back, maintaining her composure. A lifetime of keeping her dreams private made it difficult to accept that they might now be recognized, valued, even nurtured. "I need to think," she said finally. "Of course," Dr. Hayashi agreed. "Take all the time you need. The offer stands whenever you're ready." May nodded, then stood from the piano bench. Despite the emotional weight of the moment, she straightened her service uniform from habit. A small gesture that reminded everyone of the life she had been, living all these years while her musical gift remained hidden. "It's getting late," Dr. Hayashi said to the group. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation tomorrow, when we've all had time to process tonight's unexpected turn of events." As the faculty began to disperse, many approached May to express their admiration or to offer words of encouragement. Professor Geller lingered until most had left. "Whatever you decide," he told her quietly, "what you did tonight changed something, not just for you, but for all of us." May looked at him questioningly. "You reminded us why we became musicians in the first place," he explained. "Not for prestige or position, but because music speaks a truth that nothing else can. Some of us had forgotten that." With those words, he left her alone in the grand hall, the cleaning woman who had, for one night at least, become the star performer on its illustrious stage. 3 months passed like a musical phrase, both quicker and more profound than May could have imagined. The night of the faculty party had indeed changed everything, though not without struggle and adjustment. After 2 days of consideration during which she barely slept, May had accepted Dr. Hayashi's offer with shaking hands and a voice steady with resolve. "I want to learn," she had told him in his office. "Properly. All these years I make too, many mistakes I don't know about." The transition wasn't simple. Paperwork had to be filed, schedules rearranged. May moved from evening janitor to music library assistant, working 20 hours a week while taking lessons and practicing the rest of the time. The pay was less than her cleaning job, but the scholarship stipend made up the difference, allowing her to keep her small apartment. The first weeks of formal lessons had been humbling. Dr. Hayashi was a kind teacher but exacting. He discovered that while May had remarkable ears and natural expressivity, her self-taught technique had significant flaws. Her hand positioning needed complete reconstruction, her pedaling was intuitive but imprecise, and she had no formal knowledge of music theory. "Like building a house with a good foundation but crooked walls," Dr. Hayashi had explained gently. "We fix the walls, make them straight and strong. The foundation, your musical instinct, is already excellent." So they began at the beginning. May spent hours doing exercises she had never known existed, training her fingers to move with proper form. She studied music notation, learning to read the language she had only spoken by ear. Some days she felt like a child again, awkward and uncertain, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake in accepting this opportunity so late in life. But there were breakthroughs too. The moment when a Bach invention suddenly made sense under her fingers, revealing its mathematical perfection. The afternoon when Dr. Hayashi played a complex rhythm and she played it back perfectly, her natural sense of time showing through. The day Professor Reed heard her play a Chopin waltz and simply nodded, a gesture that from him was high praise indeed. Most rewarding was having access to a proper piano for practice. The school assigned her a small practice room, nothing fancy, but with a well-maintained upright piano that responded truly to her touch. After years of working around broken keys, the feeling of a complete functioning instrument was like suddenly being able to speak without a stutter. Not everyone at Preston Academy embraced the change. Some faculty members viewed her story as a novelty that would soon fade. A few students whispered when she passed in the hallways. The cleaning lady, who thought she was a pianist. Dr. Lawrence avoided her entirely, his embarrassment apparently too great to face her directly. But others welcomed her with genuine warmth. Professor Geller checked in regularly, offering encouragement when she seemed overwhelmed. The music librarian, Mrs. Chen, took May under her wing, helping her learn the cataloging system and sharing her lunch during busy days. And surprisingly, several students sought her out, curious about her unusual journey and even asking for her perspective on pieces they were struggling with. "You play differently," one young student had told her. "Like you're telling a story, not just showing off technique." The comment had stayed with May, a reminder that her unconventional path might offer something valuable rather than just deficiencies to overcome. Today marked a significant milestone in that journey. The Winter Student Showcase was being held in the main performance hall, the same space where May had played the grand piano 3 months earlier, changing the course of her life. But today, she would be performing not as an unexpected discovery but as an official student of Preston Academy, listed in the program between a violin prodigy from Seoul and a young composer from Toronto. Backstage, May sat quietly, hands folded, in her lap as she had seen so many students do before performances. Around her, young musicians adjusted bow ties, tuned instruments, and paced nervously. At 42, she stood out among them, but no one seemed to mind. They had all heard her story by now. Some even regarded her with a kind of awe, as if her presence validated their own musical aspirations. "Nervous?" asked Professor Geller, appearing beside her with 2 cups of tea. May accepted one gratefully. "Yes, different kind of nervous than cleaning for important concert." He smiled at that. "I imagine so. But you've been practicing hard. Dr. Hayashi says you're making remarkable progress." "Still so much to learn," May said, shaking her head slightly. "Sometimes I think, too late for me." "Too late for what? To become a concert pianist touring the world?" "Perhaps. But too late to become the musician you were meant to be?" "Never." He gestured toward the stage. "Everyone out there has a different path. Yours just took a more interesting route." May sipped her tea, letting his words settle. Over these past months, she had gradually stopped thinking of herself as just a cleaning woman who played piano, beginning to accept her identity as a musician who had once been a cleaner. The shift was subtle, but profound. The backstage manager appeared, clipboard in hand. 10 minutes, Ms. Lin. Ms. Lin. Another small change that still felt strange. For 7 years at Preston Academy, she had been the cleaning lady or simply May. Now she had a title, a place in the program, a legitimate reason to be on the stage rather than sweeping behind it. "What will you play?" asked a young student, waiting nearby, a cellist scheduled to perform later in the program. "Chopin," May replied with a small smile. "Nocturne in C-sharp minor, the one they find in his papers after he die." "Posthumous," the student nodded. "Beautiful piece. Challenging, though." "Yes, but worth the challenge." Soon, it was time. May heard her name announced, the words floating out to the packed auditorium. She rose, smoothed the simple black dress she had purchased for the occasion, her first concert attire that wasn't a cleaning uniform, and walked onto the stage. The lights were brighter than she remembered, the audience a sea of indistinct faces. She spotted Dr. Hayashi in the front row, his expression encouraging. Several rows back sat Mrs. Henderson, the event coordinator who had once barked orders at her about ice buckets and empty glasses. Near the back, she was surprised to see a group of maintenance staff, her former colleagues who had taken time from their busy schedules to support her. May approached the grand piano, no longer intimidated by its magnificence. She had spent hours with this instrument over the past 3 months, learning its personality, its responses to her touch. She adjusted the bench, took a calming breath, and began to play. The nocturne opened with a melody of profound longing, a searching quality that had drawn May to the piece immediately. Under Dr. Hayashi's guidance, she had refined her interpretation, learning to give each note just the right weight, to let the phrases breathe naturally. Now, as she played, she felt both the technical control she had gained and the emotional intuition she had always possessed merging into something greater than either alone. The middle section flowed with quiet determination before returning to the haunting main theme. May was no longer thinking about technique or the audience or her journey. She was simply in the music, telling its story as honestly as she could. When the final notes faded, she lifted her hands gently from the keys and bowed her head slightly. The applause began immediately, warm, enthusiastic, and genuine. She rose and turned to the audience, offering a small bow as she had practiced. As she looked out at the applauding crowd, May saw something that made her breath catch. In the back of the hall, standing by the doors, was Dr. Lawrence. He hadn't spoken to her since the night of the faculty party, too ashamed of his behavior. Now he was watching her with an expression of genuine respect, applauding with the rest. When their eyes met briefly, he gave a small nod that spoke volumes, an acknowledgement not just of her talent but of his own transformation. Backstage after her performance, May was surrounded by fellow students offering congratulations. The young cellist who had spoken to her earlier pressed a small bouquet of flowers into her hands, a tradition among the students that she had never known about during her years of cleaning up after their performances. "That was beautiful," Professor Geller said, appearing at her side again. "Different from how you played it last week in the practice room." "Better?" May asked. "Not better. More true. You stopped trying to play it correctly and just played it as you feel it." Dr. Hayashi joined them, his eyes bright with satisfaction. "A fine performance," he said. "Your hard work is paying off. The technical issues we've been addressing are improving, but you've maintained what made your playing special from the beginning, that honesty of expression." May accepted his praise, with a small bow of her head. "Thank you for giving me chance." "You gave yourself the chance," he corrected gently. "For years, practicing on a broken keyboard, learning however you could. All I did was open a door you had already prepared yourself to walk through." Later that evening, after the successful showcase had concluded, a small celebration was held in the faculty lounge, the same room where 3 months earlier, May had been mockingly invited to play a broken keyboard. Now she entered as an invited guest, still somewhat uncomfortable in social settings but increasingly confident in her place at the school. Several faculty members approached to congratulate her on her performance. Even Dr. Wilson, who had initially been skeptical about admitting a 42-year-old cleaning woman to their program, seemed genuinely impressed. "Your progress has been remarkable," he told her. "Truly remarkable." "Still a long way to go," May replied. "We all have a long way to go," Dr. Wilson said with surprising humility. "That's the beauty of music. There's always more to learn, more to discover." As the evening wound down, May found herself standing near the corner where the broken keyboard had once sat. Someone had mentioned that it had finally been repaired and was now being used in one of the practice rooms. "Penny for your thoughts?" Dr. Hayashi asked, joining her with a cup of tea. May smiled. "I was thinking about that keyboard, the broken one. How something that seems useless can still make beautiful music if you find the right way to play it." Dr. Hayashi nodded thoughtfully. "A fitting metaphor for many things in life." "Sometimes I still can't believe," May admitted quietly. "From cleaning floors to playing concert, like dream." Not a dream, Dr. Hayashi assured her. Just a long-delayed reality, and this is only the beginning. May looked around the room, at the people who had once looked through her, and now saw her, at the world that had once seemed closed to her and now offered possibilities she was only beginning to explore. The path ahead would not be easy. There were still technique issues to address, theory concepts to master, years of formal training to catch up on. Some days would be frustrating. Some goals might remain out of reach. But standing here now, she knew with certainty that she had found her way home, not to a place, but to herself. To the musician who had always lived inside her, waiting patiently through years of cleaning and broken keyboards for the chance to finally be heard. Only the beginning, May repeated, raising her teacup in a small toast to whatever might come next. Good.